Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome back to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, it's great to have you along. I think we're up on all our platforms now. Yeah. And so if there's a platform that you're used to seeing the Rabbi Orlofsky Show and it's not there, please contact us. But of course, if that's the only platform you use, you won't know that I just said this. So I have no idea what to do for you at this point. But we're getting back in the groove. I didn't get one email asking if I was dead. And I think that's very good. It's definitely a step in the right direction. You could hear thousands of people across Klal Yisrael give a collective sigh. Oh, Baruch Hashem, the Rabbi Orlofsky Show is back. I can breathe a little easier. I can sleep a little more comfortable at night. And I even got back my mug. Huh? How about that? The Rabbi Orlofsky Show mug. Wonderful. So we are back in the groove. And we have a sponsor for this week's episode. One of our most popular sponsors who comes to us very often. So I'm reading their idea. The episode is sponsored by the Chicago Chesed Fund in honor of their 9th annual Tesla Raffle. Have you ever dreamt of owning your very own Tesla? Well, Chicago Chesed Fund is giving you the chance to drive the dream with their 9th annual Tesla Raffle. You know, not everybody can appreciate an electric car. I mean, a Tesla's top of the line. I have an electric car, but the extension cord is a killer. I can only go so far. After a while, it starts to tangle, you know. So this is a Tesla. Has a little computer in the front and everything, you know. My son, Yaakov, is leasing a Tesla. And he says it's the same amount as a regular car, you know, and you got to plug it in at night and stuff, and it doesn't make any noise. So if you want to run somebody over, it has that as an advantage. But anyway, back to our dedication. Our lucky winner will have the exciting opportunity to choose the Tesla vehicle of their choice, whether that's Model S, Model Y, Model X, Model 3, the Cybertruck, or, if you don't want a Tesla, a $50,000 cash alternative. The choice is yours. Now, I don't know if you can make this cheshbon, but that means that a Tesla probably costs a lot of money. So it's like, if you want, you can take $50,000. Or you can have a Tesla, an X, a Y, a Z, a W, whatever it is. Your Tesla of your choice. So I'm not here to talk about Tesla, okay? The raffle benefits the Chicago Chesed Fund. That's what's important, and we have spoken about them many times. And it's 80-plus programs and services dedicated to helping Chicago community members in need get back on their feet. Such an important thing to do. There have been 8 previous winners of this popular annual raffle. If you enter today at ccfraffle.com, we're going to put it on the screen so you can see it. You might just be the 9th, but don't wait. There are only 9,999 total tickets available. What happened? It maxed out? You can only have 4 spots over there on your counting program? Upgrade, for crying out loud. Go for 10,000. And thousands have already been sold. Oh boy, so you're running out of chances. You have until this raffle sells out or until August 20th to enter to win your dream Tesla. Go to ccfraffle.com today for your chance to drive the dream. Wait. Use code Orlofsky, Orlofsky. A lot of people always put in a V. There's no V. I understand why. Because my name in Europe was Orlofsky. I had an old machzor from my grandfather. It was Aleph Vav Reish Lamed Ayin Vav Vav Samach Kuf Yud. Israelis often call me Orlofsky when they see that. When they got to Ellis Island, they changed the V to an F. This happens. That's why in America you can meet a girl named Rifki. Where did that F come from? Because Americans can't pronounce the V. They're Rifki. Yeah? So it became Orlofsky. But it's Orlofsky. People sometimes make that mistake, but I always point out that I'm such an unav. And I have to say that of my many qualities, I would have to say my anava is probably the greatest. So I put an FS into my name. So Mamasha, I'm an FS. ORLOFSKY to get $25 off 2 tickets or more. That means you use my name, you save money. How about that? It makes sense because you don't pay for this podcast. That's ccfraffle.com, code Orlofsky. Mice and money may be used towards the purchase of raffle tickets, which means that if you get a Tesla out of this, that's gewaldic. If you win thousands of dollars, that's also terrific. But Lamaisi, you're helping do important work. You're helping people. So this is Kedai. Don't forget to use that Orlofsky code for a discount, and also so that the Chicago Chesed Fund is one of our regular sponsors, because they know that the people who listen to the Rabbi Orlofsky show are dedicated listeners, and they're people who care. That's why they have always gotten a good response from our listeners. And please, we urge everybody to participate in this wonderful event. Now, if you want to call them up and say, listen, take my money, I don't want the Tesla. Okay, I don't think they'll mind. But was ist schlecht if you win the Tesla? You know what I mean? Like, you can use it for chesed, drive people around, yeah, with a very, very long extension cord. Just kidding about that. Anyway, okay, that's our sponsorship. So, we've been doing this for years, and I go through Tekufas, and what I haven't done in a long time is do a Parsha Shir. Somebody has said to me, from the original, the old listeners, they used to say, when you used to have the podcast, so especially now that producer Yisrael is getting it out before Shabbos, you can watch this, you have something to say over on Shabbos. It's Mamash Dvar Torah. But, as I move through different phases and places, and I've got things that every now and then I go into a series, and I've promised already for a long time I was going to do how to choose a yeshiva, because I did how to choose a seminary. So we've been waiting on that, but we just have so much stuff going on. I mean, I've been incognito for these 6 months. You know what I mean? Just disappeared. I feel like John Fetterman. Anyway, so I'm not even going to touch that. There's so much material. It's just, you don't have to do anything. Sometimes it's enough, I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you a joke. And this joke shows you that there's certain jokes that you can tell your audience from the joke. Yeah, I'll show you what I mean. I heard this story from my good friend Y.Y. Rubenstein. It is a hysterical joke. He's very, very funny. If you watched our live show, if not, you can still go back and watch that. That's the magic of the Rabbi Orlofsky show, is that every now and then I get an email from somebody who says, I just discovered this. I started at the beginning and I've been going straight through. And I tell you the truth, I don't remember, right? We have up someplace the highlight reels of season 1 and 2, and I just go back and watch that. I don't remember her saying any of these things. It is amazing. I forget what I say. I'll give you an example. I don't forget I have to tell this joke from YY, but okay. So my daughter is listening to a shir, and I'm overhearing the shir, and the guy quotes me saying something I have no recollection of ever saying. I just don't even remember it. Yeah? It was the famous Gemara with Rav Preda. Rav Preda had this student, this Talmud, who had a hard head. He had to repeat everything 400 times to the guy with chapet. 400 times. So he would sit there every day and say it over 400 times, yeah, and until the kid chapped it. One day he said, listen, after we learn, I got to go to a chasana, and he teaches it the 400 times, and the kid doesn't chap. And he says, my hi, what happened today that you don't know it? He says, I was nervous the whole time you were going to leave. So he says, all right, we'll stay and do it another 400 times. And after that, a baskol came out for a preda. and said, because of this, you're either going to get a very long life or you're going to get, guaranteed a place in Olam Haba, or you choose. So the person giving the shir said, why didn't the kid get a baskol? He sat and steiged 800 times to get this down. Why didn't he get a baskol? So he says, Rabbi Orlofsky once said, because you think the baskol wanted to repeat itself 400 times? Now, I have no recollection of ever even talking about that Gemara. I didn't know I ever even mentioned it. So he says, of course, that's not pshat, and he gave pshat, but I was like, what a brilliant line. I have no idea I ever said that. Anyway, so why I said this joke, it was hysterically funny because he has such a wonderful delivery. If you remember when he was talking, he has a Scottish accent because he's from Scotland, right? But he could put on an American accent in a second. He could put on almost any accent. I heard him do Spanish. I heard him do all different California. Anyway, so he here's the joke. This guy gets married, and he's married a month, and he says to his chavrusa, "Hey, you want to come for supper? You're always eating in yeshiva. We're always eating yeshiva. You want a home cooked meal?" I said, "Sure." So they come to their little apartment. He goes in the kitchen. He says, "Honey, I invited Shlomi home for supper." Because what? I wasn't expecting anybody. I only made food for 2 people, like mamish, 2 people. There are people like this, by the way. I'm interjecting into the story. My mother doesn't know how. My mother over Shalom did not know how to make food for 2 people. She wouldn't know how. But sometimes people make 2 pieces of chicken, and they make 2 this and that. That's it. That's all they. But some people make flat. But okay, so she said, I only made for 2 people. Goes, all right, I'll tell him to leave. Shlomi goes, no, you can't tell him to leave. He's here already. I said, well, what are you going to do? He says, I'll make everything into small portions. Whatever you do, don't offer him doubles. Okay. So they bring out the fish. And the fish goes, how's the fish? It's just delicious. So you want another piece? And he goes, no. Okay. They bring out the soup. Everyone gets a half a bowl of soup. He goes, how's the soup? Delicious. You wanted some more? No. Okay. They bring out the main course, etc. They bring out the dessert. Say, oh, how is it? Delicious. Want another piece of cake? No. Okay. After he leaves, the wife said, what did you do? He says, what do you mean? I told you not to offer doubles. We didn't have any more food. He goes, I forgot. Why didn't you say something? Because what do you mean? I was kicking you under the table the whole time. The husband goes, I didn't feel anything. Now, there are some people you don't have to give the last line. They copped it already. They already got the joke. She said, I'll kick you under. They got it. And other people needed a little more, spelled out till they said. So like you tell a joke like that and half the audience laughs and the other half of the audience laughs, so, okay. So let's talk about the Parsha. Yeah. Parsha's Matos-Masei, we finish up Bamidbar. There's a beautiful shmooze by Yitzchak Isaac Sher, Lekat Sichus Musa. I don't even know if it's in print anymore. I one time went to Slobodka Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and I bought out all their copies, and I used to give it as a bar mitzvah present, because you could be pretty sure nobody else is giving a Lekat Sichus Musa by Yitzchak Isaac Sher. And every shmooze speaks to me. I can't say that about every Musa Sefer. There are some shmooze, it speaks to you, it doesn't speak to you. Some of them are a little too esoteric, some of them are a little too rough. But he has this way of talking that is so brilliant, so to the point, so positive, that I can honestly say that every shmooze I looked at in that Sefer was meaningful to me. And in fact, there was a tekufu I used to go and speak in Efrat. I haven't done it in a while. And very often I would say, an idea over from Yitzchak Isaac Sher and include it in. And one time I met somebody years later, and he says, listen, I enjoyed all your speeches, but the thing I have to thank you for is getting me into Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Sher. I went out and bought the Sefer, and you're right. Every single shmooze is a gem and speaks to you. So I just thought I would say that. Okay, so I want to share this idea. No, it's interesting. Last week, I pulled an actual sefer out of the bookcase to show that it's the real bookcase. Somebody wrote and said, you didn't have to do that because I could tell you weren't using a green screen because your arm wouldn't keep disappearing every time you would move it over. So I knew already that it wasn't a green screen. And somebody else said, I could tell that it wasn't a green screen because your shelf is broken. So I thought, oh my gosh, he's right. I should really fix the shelf. Or instead, I just put the Rabbi Orlofsky sign in front of it to block it. My brothers did this once. They were having some kind of fight and they made a hole in the wall. And so they just kept the pillow in front of it. It took years till my father found it out. Anyway, I'm reading to you from Perek Lamed Beis, Pasuk Aleph. That's 32, chapter 32, verse 1 in Numbers for my Christian listeners, because every now and then I get an email that there are non-Jews who follow my podcast and enjoy it. So I'm giving you this biblical reference to make it a little easier for you. For the Yidden, it's Perek Lamed Beis Pasuk Aleph. I got to be careful because Jackie Mason says that's how he started, is that he was giving his sermons and then we'd put in some jokes. And after a while, non-Jews were coming to the service because they wanted to hear the jokes. And so I became the only rabbi of a Christian congregation. Umikna Rav Hayel B'nai Reuven God Atzum Ma'od. B'nai God B'nai Reuven had a lot of cows. V'yiru Eretz Yazav Eretz Gilad V'yinei Makam Makam Mikna. And this is cattle country. Yeehaw. V'yivo B'nai God B'nai Reuven V'yamah Moshe V'yalazar Kain V'yalazar Yedolema. And they come to everybody and they say, Ataris v'divim v'yaziv v'nimrod v'cheshbon v'ayala v'shvam u'nevo b'ayen aretz ha'shehika Hashem l'fnei adas eretz Yisrael eretz miknehi u'li'avadecha mikneh. This is cattle country and we have cattle. Now, there's this Sof Parsha over here, which is kind of strange because it's in the middle of their speech. They continue. So the Parsha ends. V'yamru and if we find favor in your eyes, so give us this land as inheritance, and we will not cross over the Jordan. Someone asked Tzvi Kushalevsky once, why is there a break in the middle of their speech? You end the parsha. So Tzvi says, I can see you never fundraised. Because if you ever fundraise, you sit down with the person and you say, we have a yeshiva, we have X number of talmidim, this is our budget. And when the guy doesn't get it, you say, therefore we want you to give us money. So they come to Moshe and they say, listen, we got a lot of cows, and this is cattle country. No? Okay. So therefore, give us this land as an inheritance, and we will not cross over the Yarden. And Moshe says the following. What? You're not going to go and fight with your brothers? You're going to leave them to fight for themselves? They helped you capture Ever Yarden. And when people see you guys are strong and you're not going to go over, God was known that when you always knew when God was in the battle because they used to cut off the head and the arm with one stroke. They were very God Gadud. They were armies, powerful people. They see you're not going to come, they're gonna lose heart. Then we'll have the Meraglim all over again. Meraglim too. Is that what you want? Yeah. So they said, no, we'll go in the front of the battle and we'll fight and we won't go back home until everybody gets their land 100%. She says, okay, no problem. As for Yitzchak Isaac Sher, could you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu davened 515 tefillos for the chance to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael? He says to Hashem, make me into a bird and let me fly into Eretz Yisrael. Just fly over it. Let me have a chance. And Kodesh Baruch Hu let him at least see the land. Imagine you're sitting there, you're Moshe Rabbeinu after all this, and Reuven and God came and said, nah, that's okay, we don't have to go to Eretz Yisrael, we'll stay right here. You don't want to go to Eretz, one second, you don't want to go to Eretz Yisrael? and live in houses that you didn't build, and eat from vineyards that you didn't plant, and drink from cisterns that you didn't dig, as the pasuk says. You could have all of this, and you're giving it up because you have a lot of cows. That's the problem? Cows? Says Isaac Share, I can solve the problem. I'll shech them all. We're not allowed basa taiva yet, but we'll bring them all as a korban shlamim. And we'll have the biggest barbecue on the range. Yeehaw! And everybody will come in and there'll be steaks galore and everybody will be as thrilled as they possibly could be. How about that? And then you could go into Israel. That's your problem, is you have cows. He says, and you don't find that Hashem is upset that they're giving up Eretz Yisrael. And you don't find that Moshe is upset that they're giving up Eretz Yisrael. The only thing is he wants to make sure you're going to do your part for the Jewish people. But the fact that you're giving up Eretz Yisrael doesn't seem to care. That's his question. And his answer is so incredibly important, because it affects every single person every single day of their life, if you're smart. Okay, I'm sitting here pausing, thinking, is this something controversial I'm going to say? And then I realize, why do I care? Because it never makes a difference in the past. But I have 8 daughters, and they're all talented. All talented. My sons are talented too. But I'm speaking specifically by dance. Most of my sons have not taken dance, to the best of my knowledge. I don't really know, but yeah. But a lot of my daughters have taken dance. They've taken ballet. They've taken different types of dance. They're very good. One of them is a dance teacher. One of them is a Zumba teacher. One of them had a dance studio. You know, it's okay. They have a natia towards dance. And it was one of the many contradictions of living in Eretz Yisrael is that the Beis Yaakov here says you can't take ballet. But the classes were given in the Beis Yaakov, which was kind of strange. But one of the many contradictions that you learn. So I remember I mentioned this to Mendel Weinbach, and he said to me, Yerushalayim is provincial in their approach. It's a great word. You know, he was a very, very smart guy. That's provincial is a fancy word for shtettelkeit. But it's like, nah, what do they need it for? It's nah, yeah. And very often you encounter this. Says Rabbi Isaac Sher, if a Kodesh Baruch Hu gave you a lot of cows, you don't have a right to just throw it away. You have an obligation. The Gemara says, anyone who says they're too poor to learn Torah, not true. No, Hillel was very, very poor, and he was able to learn Torah. And anyone who says he's too rich to learn Torah, it's not true. It brings a Tana that owned 70 cities, was able to learn Torah. So I thought to myself, that's your problem? Is you're so rich? So you know what? Sell everything, put it into a CD, or whatever they had back in the ancient world, you know, Gimel Dalet, and invest it, and sit and learn. You have to worry about taking care of all the cities and all the businesses and all the places. You hear what he's saying? What do I need this for? There was an article in the Reader's Digest about the town where the entire town was based on the textile business that was being run by a Jewish guy, frum guy. And the factory burnt down, and at that point, everybody was moving their production overseas. And he didn't. He kept it. Yeah. He kept it in the town, and he rebuilt the factory, and he paid everybody their salaries while he was rebuilding the factory. including their holiday bonus. And the whole article is just talking about how he saved the town and the families and what they would have done. And, and everything go on and on and on. The last paragraph, they talked to the guy, Mo Feuerstein, the last paragraph. And they said, why did you do this? I mean, this goes against world business practice. It doesn't make any sense. And he said, because I'm an Orthodox Jew. Talk about a Kiddush Hashem. Yeah? So I have an obligation to all these families. I can't just toss them out. You want to hear a sad story? You want to hear something sad? Sure you do. There's a shul that was a church. And whatever the congregation was, I think they were Quakers. There weren't that many Quakers around anymore. So they instead they went to they sold it to the shul. Still had a steeple on top, and there was an extra house, and they said, you don't get the house, even though they bought the whole thing, you don't get the house until the parson's widow dies, because she's going to stay there until the end of her life. And it was decades before she died. They couldn't use the house. And someone in the shul said, one day we'll make a mikveh out of that. We'll do something with the house, Because, but now, they want the widow to stay. And the person in the shul said to me, says, if that was the Rebbitzin, no question they would throw her out in a minute. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely a sad commentary. Yeah? So there's something beyond the bottom line. If a Kadosh Baruch Hu gave me these towns, and people are living there, and there are businesses, and there are things that have to be taken care of, I have an obligation to those people. I can't just walk away from it. Reuven and Gad were smart. They realized we got an unusual amount of cattle, more than everybody else. And so we have to say, Kadosh Baruch Hu obviously wants us to be cowboys. Don't let your sons grow up to be cowboys. We're going to be herders. Yeah? That's a correct way of referring to people who take care of cattle. Right? I don't know if you're old enough to remember this joke from being a kid. I don't know if kids still tell this joke, Someone says, look at those bunch of cows. They said, no, herd. Herd of what? Herd of cows. Of course I've heard of cows. No, cow herd. What do I care what a cow herd? I have no secrets from a cow. So Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be herders. So we're going to take the gift that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us and we're going to use it. Because everybody has gifts. Everyone has milas and everyone has chesronis. This is how it goes. Some people have a lot of milas. Some people have a lot of chesronis. But everybody has certain abilities, whatever those abilities may be. Each person has to look for themselves and figure out where their talents and abilities lie. But you can't just let it go to waste. No. I had a girl in Darchi Bina years ago. And her dream was, the theater. She wanted the theater. She loved the theater. Now, if you're a frum girl, your options in the theater, particularly musical theater, are extremely limited. You understand, dancing in the chorus, singing, all these kind of things can be problematic. And she used to speak to me about this. And by the end of the first year, she realized that this is not going to work. So by the second year, she said, but I have all of these talents and abilities. And Hashem gave me them. I'm supposed to do something with them. I said, so, as we used to say in The Little Rascals, let's put on a show. Make a show. So she says, How? What? I said, you have all the talents and all the abilities. You figure out how to put on a production. Now listen to this. This was in Chicago. Yeah. Chicago, Chicago, a wonderful town, right? She was in Chicago. And she wrote a play out of Mary Poppins. Now, they've done this on Broadway, but hers was first. And she, with the songs, with the dance, everything like that, she wrote a whole script. And she recruited women from all parts of the community. And she put people in charge of scenery, and people in charge of choreographing, and people in charge of singing. And Stuckers were supporting this so that they would get the profits from it. And they put on this production. And they had to add on extra shows. And she told me afterwards, she says, not only was it successful, not only did everybody enjoy it, she says, but we made money for Tzedakah, and it brought the community together, aspects of the community who otherwise would maybe have nothing to do with each other. Everybody came together with this project. Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave her talents and abilities, and she wanted to use them. Why did Hashem give it to me? Why would Hashem give someone a beautiful singing voice if they're not supposed to sing? Okay, so you can't sing for men, but that doesn't mean you can't sing. Gemara says clearly, someone who has a beautiful voice is supposed to use that voice, to Dovid, to lead, to inspire. We haven't had a music guest in a while. We missed our Shabbos Shira. Maybe we'll do one yet beforehand. I reached out to a well-known personality in the music world recently. I don't want to mention his name in case he decides not to come on the show, and I don't want him to get a lot of hate mail from the Rabbi Orlofsky community. We'll see if he comes on. If so, we will give him a good welcome. But you know that I don't just take musicians. I don't just take music people. I take people who are Marbitze Torah and understand that the music is a hechet timsa to be able to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. In any event, when I was running NCSY in the early 80s, so there was a fellow by the name of Dov Levine. He was a music star back then. Yeah, ask your grandparents about it. My younger audience. He actually sang at my wedding. Yeah. And he was Bismano. He was really somebody. Anyway, he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he was learning in yeshiva. And he stayed by us Sukkos, Chol Moed Sukkos, because he wanted to go to the Simchas Beis HaShoevos in Yerushalayim, in the great yeshivas. And wherever he went, people recognized him, and they asked him to sing. And the whole Simchas Beis HaShoevos, he's singing night after night. And towards the end, he told me, people said to me, what are you doing? You're going to ruin your voice. And he said to me, what did Hashem give me a voice for if not to sing at a Simchas Beis HaShoeva? Brilliant, right? Absolutely brilliant. And that's the fact that everybody gets something in this world. There are people who are very good at business, and they decided to use that skill to be able to help yeshivas, to be able to build them up. There is a few different organizations, but one of my good friends who was here in Eretz Yisrael and now is in Minneapolis, Josh Last, he was part of an organization of people who get into financial trouble. He's a businessman. He's an accountant himself. He understands numbers and business. And he would sit down with the family and say, okay, how much are you spending? How much are you making? You can see this doesn't work, right? So he put them on a budget. In fact, he says, part of the conditions is you have to close all your accounts and open an account in the post office bank, because the post office bank does not have overdraft. You can only spend the money that you have. I know in America, many people are familiar with this concept, but in Israel, it doesn't exist. You don't have to have money to spend it. And he organizes them and sets them up on a budget. They give them a loan to pay back their past debts and get them on their feet. And here he says, I have a gift, I have an ability. What do I have it for if not to help Klal Yisrael? Yeah. And so everybody has gifts. Whatever those gifts may be. Some people are great listeners. And I've been told this by more than one psychologist. A lot of what I do could be replaced by a good friend. If there's just somebody to listen, but there's nobody to listen. Yeah, I need somebody to talk to. So instead, I'll pay this guy to sit and listen to me. What a friend could just hear them out and no se ba'olam chavero, carry their burden. Yeah. So that's the message of these cows, is that these cows came from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you don't have a right to throw them away. And whatever you're given with a sense of obligation. I have to do something with it. And so, Mitzvah Hashem, everybody out there has talents and abilities, and we have to figure out if it's artistic, if you're art, you play an instrument, you can sing, you can speak, you can organize, you can, whatever your gift is, understand that you cannot waste it. You have to use it, and Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to expect you to do that. Baruch Chait, his father Moshe Chait, that's how it was Rosh Hashiva and Chavetz Chaim here in Eretz Yisrael. So when they'd have a Simchas B'Shoeva, so Barry would pull out his guitar, and his father would take out a harmonica, and they would sing. they would use their abilities to be able to use it to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, now we are up to the question and answer portion of our program. First question: would you ever consider moving from Eretz Yisrael to America to run a yeshiva? Yes, I would consider anything. I never say no. Yeah. What do I mean? When I married my wife, I was going out with my wife. One of the many reasons she didn't want to marry me, and there were a lot of them, but one of them was because she wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, and I said I was running NCSY in Long Island right now, and I can't go. And I said, because I want to go to Eretz Yisrael because I believe it's Ratzon Hashem for people to live in Eretz Yisrael. I've got psukim that support me, but I think it's, Reb Moshe Feinstein Paskins, it's a Matos-Masei that is mekuyim to live in Eretz Yisrael, and it's a tremendous thing. But I said, but right now, Kadosh Baruch Hu wants me here. You think Reb Moshe Feinstein didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael? Of course he did, but he had an obligation. To the Jews over there. You have to know. One of my dear friends, the Zollbergs in Johannesburg. So they have, there was, when the crime in South Africa was getting terrible, so everybody who had means was trying to leave and get out of there. And I said to them, would you ever consider leaving? And he said, no. He says, if all the people with means leave, what happens to the people without means? Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to support the yeshivas and the institutions? We can't just turn our back and run away. We have to be here. We have an obligation to be here. So I said, I have an obligation to be here, but if the situation changes, then of course I would love to move to Eretz. So we got married, and I ran into his wife for a number of years until I got so burnt out. I still remember I would be in my office, and the secretary would buzz me and say, so-and-so is on the phone. And I'd say, tell them I'm dead. And he says, Rabbi Orlofsky can't come to the phone right now. And I said, no, tell them I'm dead. Tell them I died. So people started to realize that I was losing it, my hold on reality. I was burnt out. I had nothing left to give. I was an empty vessel. So I went there to sit and learn. Yeah. So I said, okay, now I'm ready to go. I came to Eretz. I originally came for 3 years to sit and learn and then go back in Rabbonis. That was 35 years ago. So I'm still here. I guess I never found a job, but I never say no. I say, let's hear. I was in Australia, flew down to Australia, and the dice school in Sydney, which is the largest dice school in the world. So I met with them, and they said, would you ever consider coming to Australia? I said, if you can show me there's something I can do here that nobody else can do, that's Ratzon Hashem, then I would consider it. And we sat, and we met, and we discussed, and we worked it out, and that. And at the end, they said, okay, we'll be in contact. That was about 4 years ago. So, but if someone can tell me that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me in this place at this time. There was a very large day school with about 1,000 kids between all the different divisions that was offering me to become the head of the school. And I met with Rabbi Shapiro to work out technical details, etc. And when it was all done, I said, but Rebbe, I don't want to go. And he said to me, Dovid, we don't go where we want, we go where we're needed. And I can't be mavater on 1,000 kids. But they turned me down, so it wasn't a problem. Anyway, so would I, in theory, consider a position? Sure. But let's face it, when you're in your mid-60s, you're not as marketable as you might believe. Even though, my mom made it to 89 in terrible health. So, it used to be people retired at 65 because most people died at 70. But today, you meet people all the time at 11 to 90, So 65, my gosh, it's only 2/3 of the way through. So anyway, but I never say no. Someone can make an argument that this is something that you can do that nobody else can do. And it's important. Though I love Eretz Yisrael, and I only breathe here. I can't breathe anyplace else, but I will do whatever Ratzon Hashem is, wherever it sends me. Okay, and the next question is there ever a time where I could see something I could do in my avodas Hashem, but I don't think I'm on the level, or is there no such thing? This is a tricky question. Yeah? We say in Hashkivenu, V'haseh satan milefanenu o me'acharenu. Remove the Satan from in front of me and from behind me. So the Satan in front of me, we know that's our typical Yetzer Hara, who is tempting us to do Aveiros and to go against Torah, and okay, that we understand. Who's the Satan behind us? That's the one pushing us to go faster than we can. And when you push somebody to go faster than they can, very often they crash. So you have to be realistic. They tell a story that, in Europe, they didn't have these fancy, tables covered in formica, that they have today. They were regular wooden tables. So if you leaned on the table, you could very often wear out your elbow. So the Rosh Yeshiva, who had frock coats, would pull up their coat, put on the table, and lean on the cloth so that their elbows wouldn't get worn out. So a bacher sees this, has a short coat. He pulls his coat up, and he's twisting to get onto it. Anyway, the Rosh Yeshiva sees him and comes over and says, for some things, you need a long coat. When you have a short coat, you can't pull it off. So you have to know where you are and what your limitations are. And if I try to take on too much, listen, you see this all the time, right? I saw an email that says, I didn't get to the gym today. That makes 4 years. So you find people who haven't gone to the gym in a long time, and they say, okay, I'm going to go. So they do 4 push-ups. And they say, well, that's not too bad. I could do 3 more. And they push, do 3 more. He goes, you know what? I could probably do 3 more. And by the end, they're dead. And they said, I knew I couldn't work out. No, it's because you set unreasonable goals for yourself. And the introduction to Sefer Cheshvan HaNefesh, he says there were 2 people who wanted to daven with Kavana. And one guy said, I'm not moving here till I daven the entire Shemona Esrei with Kavana. The other guy says, I'm going to work on the first bracha. When I get that down, I'll move to the second bracha. When I get that down, I'll move to the third bracha. So the second guy, it took him years, but he eventually davened with kavana. The first guy had a nervous breakdown because it was unrealistic. So when you say, is there something in my avodas Hashem that I could be doing? This is why aseh lecha rav v'kaneh lecha chaver. You need someone to help you in your development as a yid and to say, is this something I can do or I can't do? You could try it and see if it's working for you or not. You can backtrack. You put your toe in the water, but you got to be realistic. And if you end up doing things that make you resentful or strip your simcha, then it's not working. Not working. So when it comes to avodas Hashem, you got to be honest in your evaluation. And our next question is, why do you think many people are happy if they can be mechaven to a Rishon's question, but aren't as happy when they ask the Gemara's question? Okay. For those of you who don't have a Gemara background, it means like this. When you learn Gemara, Talmud, so it's question and answer. The Gemara asks the question, then gives an answer, the Gemara asks the question, gives an answer, etc., right? And very often the Rishonim, who are the early commentators, medieval times, they will ask questions on the Gemara. So every now and then you come up with a question and someone says, oh, it's the Rashba's Kasha. Yeah, the Rashba asked that question. Or the Ramban asked that question. Yeah, or the Ritva asked that question. And you see that people are very happy. But if they anticipate the next question in the Gemara, they're not as happy. So the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. If I'm chaving the Gemara's Kasha, and I very often am when I'm preparing a shir, and I come up and I say, I don't understand. And then I see the Gemara ask that question. Oh. Now, sometimes when I'm giving shir, and somebody says, they ask a question that's in the Rishonim, and I say, oh, brilliant question, but you're 1,000 years too late. Somebody asked it already. And sometimes they ask a question in the Gemara, and I say, oh, brilliant question. You're 1,500 years too late. And sometimes they ask a question that's in the Mishnah, I go, oh, brilliant question. You're 2,000 years too late. But to my mind, the skill of learning, you don't need me, but Rabbi Orlofsky said this, that the definition of a lamdan is somebody who knows how to ask good questions. You have to figure out the questions. He says, giving answers, that's parnasa. That's how you make a living, by giving answers. But if you look at it and you don't see the question, I think it was the Chazon Ish who said, says, if you learn Tosfos and you didn't anticipate the Marashah's question, then you probably didn't learn Tosfos right. That's not called learning. You have to see the questions that are there. Yeah? And you have to encourage people to ask those questions and to see them. So I guess the idea is that since the later commentaries are commenting on what went beforehand, so you'll have Achronim who are commenting on the Rishonim, Rishonim who are commenting on the Gemara. So to my mind, if you anticipate any question, I think it's a great thing. But I guess it's because since the Gemara is there in black and white, and it's like, you should already know all Shas. I mean, gosh, what's the big deal? You figured out the question. You did it, last year when you ran through Shas. You know what I'm saying? David Feinstein used to finish Shas every year for Moshe's yahrzeit. So that's the only thing I could possibly imagine. But to my mind, I think if you anticipate the question of any of these steps, it's a tremendous thing. In Torah, why is it that people inherit the status of their parents? A person is Jewish because of their mother. Kohen, Levi, or Yisrael is from their father. Someone whose father was a slave automatically becomes a slave. But why aren't these things determined by merit instead of inheritance? It's a very interesting question. And I would say the following. There's a certain reality. We inherit things from our parents. We inherit character traits. By the way, I remember reading Psychology Today, maybe 40 years ago. that they did a study, and they found that character traits, like moral character traits, if you're kind and things like that, can be inherited. They talked about two twins. They both came from kind parents, and they were adopted by different families. And it didn't matter if the family was kind or not, these kids became kind. It was built into them. And so we look at it from the point of view of not only is there a genetic predisposition to certain things, there is also a spiritual genetics. And that's why Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov imbued the Jewish people with certain innate traits. And the way the Gemara says that Jews are Baishanim, Rachmanim, and Gomlei Chasadim. By nature, Jews have a sense of shame. That's what they call the Jewish guilt, and they're kind and they're merciful. You can kill those traits, but you're starting off with those, whereas other people don't necessarily have those traits, and it's been passed down to you in a particular way. Everyone remembers the famous story with the Chavetz Chaim with Rishon Schwab, where he comes to him. He's about to take a position in Germany, and so he says, "Are you a Kohen?" He says, "No." He says, "You were a Levi?" He says, "No." He says, "Why not?" He says, "My father wasn't." "Why wasn't he?" Because his father wasn't. His father wasn't. He says, "You know why you're not a Levi? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu stood in the camp and said, 'Mila Hashem Elai,' who is for God? My great-great-grandfather came and yours didn't." He says, "You're going to Germany now, you're going to hear the call. Don't miss it a second time." So there are moments in history which are very dramatic, and it imbues us with a certain sense. Now, we're weak. That's the Jewish concept. Each generation gets weaker and weaker. Is it possible to change that? Sure. You see, Pinchas was able to do an action that was so dramatic that it made him a Kohen. There was a change that took place. It's only possible when you're on that kind of a level to imbue it at the beginning of your existence, to build into yourself those kind of spiritual dynamics. And then you're born with certain predispositions, right? Physically, it could be a predisposition to breast cancer, to diabetes, to heart disease, to being overweight. It could be a midos predisposition, and it could be a spiritual predisposition where you have a natural tendency towards a particular thing, and that is passed down from father to son. So it's an opportunity. You can do whatever you want with it, right? Somebody pointed out that yichus is a long string of zeros. If you put a 1 in front of it, priceless. If you don't, then it was just wasted potential. But we believe that there were decisions that were made that imbued the Jewish people. On the one hand, Levium on the one hand, Kohen on the other hand, an Eved who becomes an Eved. The Sfas Emes said, not every Kanani becomes an Eved, but people who have a tendency towards that original crime of Ham and Canaan, which led the curse of slavery, it means that they have those character traits, they become slaves. So this is what we believe. We believe in innate spiritual potential. Okay, well, that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sign up for our online shiurim. You can make a comment. You can sponsor an episode. And you can download the theme song, listen to it after the 3 weeks. And that's the story. My name is David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.